This is the story of a man who was the strongest hero of the world, but was betrayed by those near him. We begin with the sudden emergence of monsters into the world, bringing destruction to Earth. However, all of that ended when the 13 gods fought the demons. The strongest amongst all the gods was the 13th god, which made the 12 gods angry, causing them to trap and kill the 13th god in order to rule the world. This is the story of Lee Gun, the 13th god, strongest in the world, and his revenge against those that harmed him. Let's start the storyline, beginning on the last day of the 20th century. Earth's peace was destroyed with the arrival of disasters, a disaster more difficult than anything humans had ever faced so before. Humanity fell into great chaos due to the powerful creatures from an unknown civilization that appeared suddenly. The world was engulfed in panic as these creatures tried to feed on humans. Humanity called these creatures of unknown civilization disasters. The emergence of disasters could appear anywhere and any time around the world. Humans fought with modern weapons, and even nuclear weapons were not enough to defeat the disasters. In the end, the disasters continued to destroy the Earth without anyone being able to fight back. Hope existed once again because of the 12 gods of the zodiac, whom we call the divine gods. They gave the blessings to 12 selected awakened humans to receive power directly from the divine god. These 12 chosen people were called saints. However, unexpectedly, there was a 13th awakener who appeared without getting the blessing of any of the divine gods. Even so, he was included as part of the saints. They know him by the name Lee Gun. After the awakening of the 13 saints, humanity began to fight back. The 13 saints decided to join forces and plan to raid the place where the most terrible disaster that massacred humanity had gathered. That place is called the Demon Tower. The day before the raid to the Demon Tower, Lee Gun was seen having a meal with one of the saints from the Sagittarius zodiac named Hugo Otters. Hugo says, "Listen carefully, maybe tomorrow you will die. This disaster is very terrible." Lee Gun answered, "Why did you suddenly say that? It seems like you want me to die." "Okay, I know you're worried about me, but just so you know, the number of disasters I've killed is way more than the 12 of you. Do you think I'll die there? That's impossible." The next day, the 13 saints gathered to kill the Crimson Eye, who was the leader of the disasters. They gathered in front of the Demon Tower. Lee Gun, who possessed the most strength, stood at the forefront with eyes filled with conviction. He said, "Let's start the battle," so they started the raid. When the raid took place, the other saints could only be silent and were annoyed because they saw Lee Gun easily kill many disasters. Two of the saints said, "If we managed to kill Crimson Eye, we would get a big reward." "Hey Lee Gun, you must need a lot of money. Only with money can you restore your handsome face and injured body. Later, you also have to remember in the future, don't go straight to the scene when a disaster appears in the city. We need more victims first so that they reward us with abundant money." In his heart, Lee Gun said, it sounded good calling them saints, but they are just selfish people. The saints were taken aback by a great power they felt and saw the figure of a disaster above them. They recognized him as the ruler of the tower, Crimson Eye, who was a giant-sized disaster with 3 eyes. Lee Gun couldn't believe that just by looking at it, he had already felt an intense pressure. When Crimson Eye roared, the pressure of its energy was so intense that the other saints started to panic. Suddenly, a crack shattered from the earth, as the Crimson Eye emitted a torrent of fire which penetrated the tower. The 12 saints felt fear and began to run away. Lee Gun looked at them and said, "You guys have no shame in calling yourselves divine saints." Lee Gun started to move, determined to be the one who would defeat Crimson Eye. He jumped and swung his sword right near Crimson Eye's head, managing to defeat the Crimson Eye by himself but having to lose one of his arms in the process. Lee Gun was angry because the saints left him even though he was running out of stamina. Suddenly, a dagger stabbed into Lee Gun's body from behind, and he fell into the abyss. In the abyss, Lee Gun had survived the fall and trying to crawl and was greeted by a giant eye of a disaster. Despite having a missing left arm and not being able to move his right arm, Lee Gun crawled to the dagger that was stabbed into his body and stood up straight, holding a damaged sword and the dagger in his mouth without fear. Lee Gun then continued to fight against the disasters that were there, and time flew by in his death. Countless disasters surrounded him, but Lee Gun simply stared at them, shouting with all his might, "You think you have enough to kill me? I will escape and take my revenge against those that stabbed my back." 20 years later, a disaster stood in front of Lee Gun and looked very scared. The disaster said it was impossible. How did he get to this place? Lee Gun looked at him and said, "Looks like you are the last disaster," and killed him to get out of this place. Lee Gun's appearance had changed a lot with an aged face but with strong muscles. After defeating the last disaster, suddenly, the place rumbled, and Li Gun fell, asking, "Is this the end of everything? Can I get out of here now?" In a city destroyed by disasters, two people were running, being chased by a group of disaster wolves. They knew it was over for them, as it had been predicted that Manhwa would encounter an incredibly strong monster that day. As they ran, one of them thought to themselves that if Li Gun had survived the demon tower, this type of disaster would not have been a problem. It turns out that they were in the same city where the demon tower was located. When all of a sudden, a bright light came out from the demon tower's door, causing a huge explosion to occur, leaving the two of them shocked. The demon tower was destroyed, and a human came out of the ruins. It was a man with a strong body, standing among the ruins. The man started to growl as he raged at the people around him. He accuses them of betraying him to the point that they dropped him into a trap and vowed to make them pay. He declared that all of them would die for what they had done. The man bravely fought and easily took down the wolves. He jumps high and lands near the two people trapped in the rubble. They wondered who the man in front of them was. Although the orange class disaster was known to trouble the upper awakened class, the man had managed to defeat it with ease. The two trapped people were panicked, questioning why the man had saved them. They couldn't believe that a human had saved them from the disaster. As they thought that the man in front of them had come from inside the tower, a gigantic disaster wolf suddenly appeared. The two humans were terrified and recognized it as the master of the wolf disaster from earlier. The disaster wolf gave off a powerful aura, and the wolf was enraged. It immediately spat out an attack from within its mouth, causing a big explosion. Surprisingly, the man was still standing after being touched by the disaster. With just one punch, he managed to beat the boss disaster. The man then looked at the two people behind him and asked them to buy him some food. He smiled. The two of them then took this man to a restaurant, but were soon shocked by the food bill spent by this man. They asked him who he was, and the man replied that he was just passing by. He asked why he could feel magic from one of them. The man looked shocked and felt uneasy. Upon looking in the mirror, he realized that his whole body had recovered, and that his left arm grew back to normal. To his surprise, he notices a snake symbol in his left hand, which suddenly glows and became a snake. Li Gun looked very panicked when he saw the screen that looked like a system. It contained a message about experiencing death and achieving the impossible. It also stated that his abilities would be transferred to a new body, and all achievements from the tower would be changed to experience. If he created a zodiac skill, all skills and unique trade zones would be transferred and evolved. Now he could use the power of offices, and he could see the power of the snake coming out of his body. Li Gun's cooking was slowly brought into the other dimension inside his body. He was floating in front of a snake, and he didn't understand what was happening. After being touched by the snake, he regained consciousness and fell. Li Gun asked if the two people saw a snake, but they replied that they did not see any snakes. They told him that he had just undressed and ran to the mirror before screaming. Li Gun wondered why other people couldn't see it. Suddenly, a message from the system appeared again, stating that he was now the owner of a Phaeaches. There were many messages from the system, and Li Gun was now the owner of the seat of the 13th god and many others. The current active skill was Super Regeneration, and the transferred skill was Saint's 13th Battle Good Instinct skills that could be used at the Crafting Eye of God Creation Workshop Class F. Super Regeneration allowed all injuries received by the body to be restored. The newly created body had a small penalty about the physical ability being decreased by 50%, and that its remaining cooldown time was 10 to 32 hours. Li Gun analyzed the situation and realized that the changes in his body was thanks to the skill of Super Regeneration. He had never heard of anything like this from the other saints. Besides that, he also couldn't feel the presence of the gods. Now that his body was recovering, it wasn't a bad thing. All he had to do now was to kill the saints that run away and had stabbed him. Li Gun became more excited. The collapse of the demon tower immediately shocked Korea and the world. Reporters and investigators gathered at the ruins, with two people standing there wondering if this was the work of a follower of Li Gun or a person who hates Li Gun. They were unsure. Besides that, the situation that occurred was a high-level event that even the saints found troubling. Now, we must confirm what really happened. Meanwhile, reporters kept looking for answers about the collapse of the demon tower, and were seen gathering at a press convention. One reporter asked Master Yang Wei to give his opinion on the matter. They asked if there was a chance that Li Gun was still alive. Master Yang Wei was one of the saints, who belonged to the Aries god, had no word on the matter. He then left the press conference and got into his car. He kept mumbling on about whether Li Gun was still alive. If that were true, it would be impossible because it has been 20 years since the incident happened. It was a miracle that the saints managed to get out of the demon tower, so how could he have survived? His body was damaged, but if you are still alive, then everything will be over. Yang Wei looked very annoyed. At an airport, a security team greeted a new arrival. It was Hugo Otters, one of the 12 saints. He had come to see the Prime Minister, who had requested a meeting. As he arrives, Hugo heard the news about the collapse of the demon tower. In his heart, he knew about how reporters always talked about conspiracy theories surrounding Li Gun, who disappeared 20 years ago. Unexpectedly, Hugo receives an unknown call, choosing to ignore it, still thinking about Li Gun. He remembered their past raid on the demon tower, where he had stayed behind to fight other disasters, and that the other saints fought alongside Li Gun. However, the other saints had left Li Gun behind, returning only with Crimson Eye's head. Since then, the whole world had proclaimed them as heroes. Hugo had searched for Li Gun many times, but to no avail. Finally, Jean-Louis of the Cancer Zodiac had told him not to waste his time looking for Li Gun, as it was useless, threatening Hugo that he could make it so there were only 11 saints left in the end. As he thought about this, Hugo receives a call from the Prime Minister about the collapse of the demon tower. The Prime Minister also mentions an unknown call from someone claiming to be Li Gun. Hugo was surprised to hear this and asked the driver to stop the car. He checked his phone and saw 30 missed calls from Li Gun. When he called back, Li Gun's voice answered, saying that he's gonna kill him for ignoring his calls. Hugo was shocked to hear Li Gun's voice and realized that he was still alive. Meanwhile, in Korea, Li Gun was still in the restaurant with the 2 people he had saved. He looked confused as they showed him a smartphone, calling it an interesting device. He thought about how the world had changed in the 20 years since he disappeared and realized that it had become a better place. They asked Li Gun, "So this is your first time using a smartphone? You can also see the news from here." Li Gun noticed that news about him was trending and read one of the news about his will. He remembers agreeing to distribute the treasure to orphanages and scholarship foundations, but he became angry the moment he saw the news said that the 12 saints who returned from the demon tower had changed his will. According to the new will, Li Gun had bequeathed all his wealth, including the divine relics, to the 12 saints to save humanity. Apart from Sagittarius, all of them received Li Gun's legacy. This news made Li Gun angry, and he decided to kill them all. Li Gun continues to talk to the 2 men, when he notices a message from his system, warning him that someone was watching him. Li Gun immediately came out of the restaurant and saw that it was Zodiac Avatars, the direct subordinate of the divine god. A message from the system appeared again, saying that subordinate gods should create a barrier in the name of Ares, and the strength of the other divine gods decreased. Li Gun started to get angry. Suddenly, he fell silent after hearing someone calling his name. Since everyone was talking about him being dead and gone, Li Gun thought he was hallucinating. 2 people were seen walking near him. Jamin recognized one of them as a Templar from Gemini. The 2 people came over to Li Gun, and Jamin panicked, telling Li Gun to come with him quickly, as he could get in trouble with that person. The man looked at Li Gun and said, "Look, what's all this? Get out of my way. Why are you silent? Are you really angry now? If you're angry, try to hit me." The 2 people then left Li Gun, while saying losers. It seemed like they were the people who idolized Li Gun. Li Gun looked annoyed, immediately turned around, and said, "Hey, street cockroach." The man then returned to Li Gun and said, "Try saying that one more time. You're just an ordinary person who can't even feel the greatness of someone's magic." Without saying much, Li Gun immediately flicked his forehead, causing his body to fly away. Jimin was shocked to see this while the woman then casts magic to attack Li Gun from behind. Once again, Li Gun flicked her away as well. They were both shocked that he defeated Templars with just a simple flick. This was hard to believe. Li Gun then approached the man's body and held a necklace, taking it. He said, "Isn't this a divine relic? Why do people like them have it? Only the saints should have something like this." Jimin then explains, "It seems you really don't know anything. Okay, I'll tell you everything. Humans almost became extinct several tens of years ago due to a disaster. But humanity managed to survive thanks to the divine gods and the chosen saints. However, because the whole world couldn't be protected with just 12 people, the saints gathered people to follow them and formed an organization called the Divine Cadres, with the Templars of each zodiac. The people who followed the saints then received blessings and were given power by the saints. The people who received the blessings are called disciples. The disciples were also ranked according to their strengths. At the top of the list is SSS rank, which is a saint who is directly chosen by the divine. Below the saints are SS rank, and they are called the 10 stars. 10 stars are considered to be strong candidates in becoming saints. Under 10 stars, the strongest disciple leads other disciples. Below the divine cadre captains were disciples arranged by rank from downwards. The power of the divine God comes from the disciples' beliefs. So, there is competition between each zodiac Templar to attract people into their respective divine cadre. The selected disciples will receive a gift from the divine God in the form of a divine relic. Li Gun upon hearing this and was amazed. So that's what has been happening while I was not around. It has been 20 years as the Aries avatars have gathered around him. The message from the system said that the underlings of Aries avatar of wealth and greed were enjoying their situation, waiting to see you finish off the man and woman. They expect to see blood spilled. It is said they will reward you provided he kills both. Jimin believed that it was not possible for Li Gun to get attracted by God's avatar. They were just like the shadow of the divine God. To disobey it was the same as fighting a divine God. Li Gun, it's better do it fast. Li Gun looked irritated. I wonder why Aries avatars were in this place. It seems nothing has changed for them. Li Gun stepped onto the earth and released an aura of power that instantly shattered the barrier of the Aries avatar. Li Gun laughed, even though I didn't scare anyone. The Aries avatar then ran away. Jimin looked surprised that the God avatar ran away like that. Li Gun is definitely not an ordinary person, he said. Li Gun asked Jimin if the bastard laying on the ground was from Gemini. Jimin replied, yes, you're right. The Gemini divine cadre is made up of influential people in this country. Li Gun smiled. Then they must have a lot of money. The clothes must be branded. Li Gun immediately took all his clothes, singing that looting is the best. In the evening, the three of them went to Jimin's residence. Jimin thanked him for saving them and even driving them home. Li Gun casually said, let's go inside. I'm sleepy now. Jimin, who wished for Li Gun to go home, was annoyed and asked, do you intend to stay at our place? Nevertheless, Li Gun went straight in and shaved his head. As he looked around the house, Li Gun suddenly saw many disastrous mosquitoes flying around. He kills them one by one and notices many divine relics on display. This is unnatural, he thought. It's obvious that disasters will occur if you have something weird like that in your house. Jimin answered, weird thing? I got this directly from Saints Gemini. Saints Gemini kissed it and gave it to me. Li Gun ceremoniously broke it straight away and exclaimed, it smells so disgusting. Jimin was annoyed that all the divine relics in the house were destroyed. Li Gun said, those bastards haven't had enough of stealing all my money, but they really con people with weird stuff like this. Someone then entered the room, and Li Gun asked, who are you? The man looked angry and replied, I am the owner of this house. My name is Sung Jae. Releasing a blue energy around his body. Meanwhile, at the Divine Cadre Aries headquarters, Yang Wei was given a report. Yang Wei was surprised by what he heard. Our household gods in Korea disappeared? Those avatars were the direct subordinates of the divine gods. No one would dare to drive them away. Quickly contact the other saints and find out if you have a clue. I also got another report, one of his subordinates said. Sagittarius saints, who had just arrived in England, suddenly flew out of England and headed for Korea. Yang Wei looked surprised. Knowing that Hugo was Li Gun's best friend. Could it be that the reason he moved there was because of the rumors about Li Gun surviving? Did Li Gun really come back alive? Do some deep research on this. He then asked, what about the situation now? His subordinate replied, the place where the god avatar disappeared was found near a Gemini who was lying unconscious and not wearing anything. According to eyewitnesses, the Templar Gemini fought against a handsome man. Yang Wei wondered, handsome man? Then it's not Li Gun. No matter how bad this situation is, the possibility of Li Gun coming back alive does exist. He continued, for some reason, the god avatar in Korea disappeared, and lastly, we failed to kill the Spider Queen. If this continues, my position and reputation might be threatened. Now, prepare a private plane. We're going to Korea. I'll have to check for myself what exactly is going on. Meanwhile, at the Gemini Power Hospital, the man who was beaten by Li Gun was seen lying in the hospital. The old man who was his grandfather shouts at the back of the room, who did this? The man replied, don't worry about this, chairman. This is the reason the Divine Cadre ordered me to move. The man was an S rank from the Gemini Templar with the nickname Permafrost named Min Sung Hoon. So let me get this straight, said Sung Jae, you're saying that you met a man at the Demon Tower who killed the Calamities with his bare hands, all by himself? Li Jian nodded. Yes, that's right. He even beat an A-rank disciple. Sung Jae looked impressed. Wow, he must be incredibly strong. You wink, and I'll believe he broke all the divine artifacts in our house too. Lee Jian chuckled. I told you they were all fake. Sung Jae looked at Lee Jian curiously. What divine cadre are you in, by the way? Lee Jian shrugged. Do I need to be in one? Sung Jae looked shocked. What? What divine god do you follow then? I follow myself, Lee Jian replied. Not those 12 morons. Sung Jae looked even more surprised. What about your awakened class? Lee Jian smirked. I'm in the production class. Sung Jae finally asks what his name was. Lee Gun replied Lee Gun. Suddenly, a man burst into blue flames, his face red with anger. You trespassed into our house, broke all our divine artifacts, and you tell me what name? Hyung! That name! Han Jimin exclaimed, recognizing the name Lee Jian had just given. Jimin tries his best to calm Sung Jae down. How dare you pretend? Sung Jae screams out loud, summoning his avatar. You crazy bastard, you're gonna burn the house down, screamed Jimin as Sung Jae blue flames spread around. A notification alert cautions Lee Gun that the Sung Jae's mana was exploding. Lee Gun stares in wonder of his powers. He uses the gaze of a god skill to look at Sung Jae's powers and is impressed at his abilities. Sung Jae's avatar lets out a growl. Jimin tells Lee Gun to run away as Sung Jae was an A-rank disciple of Gemini and a severe Lee Gun fanatic. Sung Jae tells Jimin to leave the house so as not to die. Lee Gun teleports behind Sung Jae, telling him he's gonna piss himself at night if he plays with fire too much. Sung Jae is shocked to see him behind him, but before he could react, Lee Gun sent him flying. Lee Gun and Jimin went to check on Sung Jae. Jimin wonders if Sung Jae was still alive and Lee Gun assures him he's fine. But looking at the state of Sung Jae makes you wonder if he's actually fine. Lee Gun then proceeds to go to sleep first while Jimin checks in on Sung Jae. Lee Gun enters the room, but is shocked at what he sees. He asks the two boys what the heck was going on. They explain that Sung Jae was a fanatic fan of Lee Gun. Sung Jae tells him not to enter the room as it was filled with a collection more important than his life. Lee Gun starts to rip the heads of the dolls, saying seeing their heads makes me uncomfortable. Sung Jae screams at him from the door, asking to stop, you crazy mother trucker. Lee Gun happily continues to rip the heads off. Sung Jae lets out a cry. At Tali's Coffee, the atmosphere changed as news report is broadcast. Here is the next piece of news. Yesterday afternoon, 2 Gemini disciples were humiliated by a suspicious individual. According to witnesses, the suspect extorted all of the victims' belongings and clothes. That's definitely Jian. Hugo exclaimed. The barista interrupted, may I take your order, but was quickly shut down. Stop the bullshit and get out of here, Yang Wei, Hugo said. Yang Wei didn't seem to be affected and said, you found out immediately. That's no fun. It's been a while, Hugo. I haven't been able to contact you for a while. You must have thought about Lee Jian as well since you're also in Korea. It'll be in your best interest if you tell me what you know. Hugo cuts the connection of Yang Wei from the barista's body, saying this is why I hate you, you possess people's bodies without their permission like a pervert. The barista snaps out of the possession, wondering what she was doing. Hugo thinks to himself that he needs to quickly find Lee Gun before anyone else. At the Bucheon Gyeonggi Province Large Mart, Sung Jae and Jimin are seen shopping. Jimin asks Sung Jae if he thinks that Lee Gun is actually that Lee Gun. Sung Jae replies no way, he looks way different. Lee Gun Nim is a hero who saved humanity, not like the thug Lee Gun. Jimin tells him that he saw Lee Gun come out of the tower and is super strong, but Sung Jae stops him as he tells him that his father told him. Jimin remembers that Sung Jae's father was Hugo Otters. Help! A thief! Is yelled out, grabbing the attention of the two boys. The thief runs past the both of them like a speedster, knocking everything out the way. Jimin recognizes the speed belonging to a Scorpio disciple. Sung Jae can't believe that someone was using abilities to steal. The thief continues to rob the mart at a high speed, stealing everything. The thief thinks to himself that no one can catch him, not even a saint, and thinks to head to the next location. Lee Gun suddenly appears saying caught you, as he punches the thief right in the stomach. The thief is shocked. Jimin asks Lee Gun what he was doing here, and he replied that he forgot to tell them to buy chicken. A man appears saying he was impressed that they managed to catch the Scorpio disciple who was hard to catch due to their speed. Lee Gun wonders who this sumbitch was. A strong shake was felt throughout the mart. The thief thought it was an earthquake and uses the chance to escape. Thinking he got a chance to run away, the ground in front of him suddenly cracks. A huge centipede-like monster emerges from the ground. The thief is shocked to see a calamity in the green zone. He thinks to run before it catches him. But it was too late, the calamity was ready to eat. The humanoid figure is seen above the calamity as it eats the thief. With multiple red eyes, it stares at the huge crowd in the mart. An announcement is given out, warning all civilians to leave immediately as a calamity has appeared in the mart. It was the Spider Queen, making the danger rank change to red zone. The announcement continues as everyone is seen running away. A boy is standing still, crying as a monster appears from behind, ready to eat him. But before it could reach the kid, Lee Gun appears, crushing its head. He tells the kid to watch where he's going and asks if he's alright while offering his hand. The kid simply runs away. Lee Gun is stunned by the reaction but is happy the kid is alright. He turns to face the calamities, wondering why there were so many in the mart. He summons his avatar, a green snake. Looking excited. In a black car, Yang Wei asks someone to repeat what they said. It was reported that a calamity had broken out at a market in Buchen and it was the Spider Queen. Hearing this made Yang Wei terrified as he knew that he had failed to kill it before and wonders how it escaped. He slams his fist thinking it would be hard to take on a red-level calamity on his own. After calamities appeared, humans divided them into 5 levels. Blue represents the gods' pure sanctuary. Green represents safe. Yellow represents caution. Orange represents danger, evacuate. Red represents ruled by calamities. Black represents human extinction. The Spider Queen's appearance had made the market into a red zone. The driver asks Yang Wei what they should do. Yang Wei thinks silently and tells them to bury it. Yang Wei believes that nobody must know that they had failed to kill the Spider Queen before. He tells the driver to say that everyone in the mart was dead and to send disciples to bury the whole building. Back at the mart, the calamities are all rushing forward. Min Sung-hoon uses his skill Glacial Prison to freeze the bugs. He pants heavily and calls the bugs bastards for looking down on an S rank. But the calamities soon broke out of the ice, screaming angrily. Sung-hoon is shocked to see this. Lee Gun appears holding a bunch of cans, telling him to move over Snowflake Bastard. He tosses the cans in the air while talking to the calamities asking them if they had nothing else to eat besides people. He throws the cans with great force, killing some of the calamities. He continues to dash forward, cutting and slicing any calamities he met on the way. Sung Jae and Jimin are shocked to see this. A notification pops up, telling Lee Gun about materials. A gem appears in his hand. The system tells him he can produce new skills and divine artificants with these production materials. He wonders if his skill has changed, wants to try it out later. He clenches the gem, thinking that the physical penalty wasn't too bad and that at this rate he'll become stronger than he was before. Sung-hoon thinks it's impossible for Lee Gun to easily kill the calamities that his S-rank magic couldn't. He looks at Lee Gun wondering where a guy like him came from. He shouts at him, realizing that he was the one that ambushed his fellow disciples. Lee Gun is stunned and ashamed. He punches Sung-hoon in the face, asking him to shut up. Lee Gun asks Sung-hoon how he knew and he told him he was wearing the same clothes and badge of the disciples he beat up last time. He explains that the badge was only given to Gemini disciples only. Lee Gun wonders how long he had the badge for while Sung-hoon says he was only this strong because of the badge. Lee Gun snaps the badge in half calling it shit. Sung-hoon is shocked to see this and calls him a crazy bastard. A vicious roar from a calamity is heard, as Lee Gun turns to find it. Jimin and Sung Jae were too stunned to speak upon seeing it. The Spider Queen is rushing forward, chasing multiple people as they scream. Sung-hoon says it's the Spider Queen. Lee Gun quickly takes notice and charges head-on towards shouting, "Hey Spider!" He punches it away telling it to F off. The Spider Queen stops in its track, surprising everyone. Sung-hoon looks at Lee Gun amazed that he did it without any divine artifacts. A voice is heard calling for all the Gemini disciples. Sung-hoon and Sung Jae recognizes the voice as the divine cadre Captain Choi Sung-hyuk. He tells them to exit the building immediately as the Ares people will bury the whole building. He further tells them that Yang Wei is coming and that there is no way to stop him just as the Ares men are seen deploying a force field. Sung-hyuk asks Sung-hoon if he has the teleport skill and tells him to get Sung Jae and himself out of the building. Sung-hoon looks around the area, seeing the injured civilians, dead calamities and Lee Gun fighting the Spider Queen. He thinks silent while Sung-hyuk asks if there was a problem. Sung-hoon with an evil smile said there was no problem at all. Sung Jae yells at the choice Sung-hoon made, saying that there were injured people around that they needed to help and that leaving them behind meant they were going to be buried alive. Sung-hoon turns and tells him what the people would think if they found out the Spider Queen appeared in the city. The relationship between the people and the divine cadre will be broken. Human devotion must be unshakable in order to receive protection from the divine gods. Sung-jae couldn't believe that he would abandon the people over that. Sung-hoon says they're lucky he still has 2 teleports left. But only Sung-jae could come due to the orders. Sung-jae refuses, asking what about his friend and the people who can't escape. Sung-hoon starts to be angry, calling him an idiot for thinking about the people. He uses his powers, saying he won't be buried with them and that he'll kill them all. Upon hearing this, Sung-jae rose in anger, releasing his blue flames. Sung-hoon walks to Sung-jae asking if he could take him on, that they are on different levels. But as he walks, Sung-hoon is struck by an object from the back. Lee Gun appears, saying why they were still here and that they needed to get out quickly. Jimin and Sung-jae explain that the exits were blocked and the only way out was to use teleport or get rid of all the calamities. Besides that, there were injured people and the Ares people outside are blocking them off. Lee Gun thinks of the situation as a pain in the ass. Sung-hoon wakes up, shouting at him, calling him a beggar for trampling on him. Lee Gun is surprised to see this and calls him out for wanting to throw away the people to escape by himself. Sung-hoon picks his phone up wanting to escape, but a huge spider web catches him. It was the Spider Queen. He is pulled into the mouth of the calamity. Lee Gun tells the 2 boys to take care of the injured first and that he'll fight the Spider Queen. The boys say what? Lee Gun's body is covered in a green aura as he says I'll be done soon. Outside the mart, the barrier set up by the Ares group is slowly covering the mart. Yang Wei arrives and asks what is happening now. Mart has been blocked off and they've sealed the entire building. Yang Wei is unhappy, saying the seal on the mart was moving so slowly. The Ares guys doing the seal are wondering why the seal wasn't working properly and that something was blocking it. A bright green flash is emitted, blinding everyone around the mart. A giant snake rises from the mart into the sky. Yang Wei is shocked to see the snake. Civilians are then seen rushing out of the mart, screaming and telling the guys to save them and that someone killed all the spiders inside. Yang Wei couldn't believe what he heard, that someone managed to do something that even he couldn't do. He tells his members that he'll check if it's true himself and tells them all to wait for him. He jumps rapidly into the mart. Once inside, he was shocked at what he was seeing. It was a dead Spider Queen. He wonders who and how they killed it. Seeing there were traces of a battle around the place. He thinks to himself that the problem was getting bigger and that he had other things to worry about him, but then he felt something. He rushes to see what it was and sees Hugo Otters below, thinking that it was him that dealt with the Spider Queen. But a voice interrupts him, saying, "Was your life more bearable because I wasn't here?" Yang Wei's face turns pale upon hearing it. "What's wrong, Ashata?" the voice said. "Are you uncomfortable somewhere?" It was revealed to be Lee Gun. He continued to say, "We haven't seen each other in a while. Why's your expression so rotten?" Yang Wei is terrified to see Lee Gun. A green siren was going off. Paramedics were seen calling for injured people, asking civilians to quickly move due to the danger. Jimin and Sung-jae were seen, both covered in a blanket. Sung-jae was deep in thought as he thinks that Lee Gun might actually be real. Sung-jae was yelled out. It was Hugo. He asked why he was here. Sung-jae turns away from Hugo, asking why he was back in Korea, while Jimin couldn't believe the Sagittarius Saint was here. "What? Is that how you speak to your father?" said Hugo with a shocked face. Jimin laughs. Hugo sees that they were not injured and that they should be fine after receiving treatment. He further asks them if they saw who killed the calamity. They ignore Hugo, much to his anger. Hugo wonders whom Sung-jae took after. Jimin mentions Lee Gun, which surprises Hugo. He grabs Jimin's shoulders, asking him to repeat what he said and where Lee Gun was and if he knew him. Jimin replies, asking Hugo if his other name was Oteksu and that Lee Gun was inside the mart and that he was the one to defeat the Spider Queen. Hugo asks Jimin to tell him in detail, but an explosive is seen coming from the mart. At the scene of the explosion, Yang Wei is breathing heavily as a red aura covers his body. Lee Gun says that is too much, that it's been 20 years since they've met and that he attacked Lee Gun out of nowhere. Yang Wei stares at Lee Gun in disbelief but notices something. The man in front of him resembles Lee Gun but has no scars and his voice sounds similar but different. There's no way he's so young, Yang Wei thought. He shouts at Lee Gun, "You bastard. How dare you impersonate Lee Gun? I got scared for no reason." Lee Gun stays silent as Yang Wei rages on, yelling at him. Lee Gun snaps and punches him straight in the stomach, asking if he thinks he's lying. Yang Wei is sent flying in the air, but Li Gun appears behind him, ready to throw a punch and slams Yang Wei straight into the ground. As Yang Wei is sprawled on the ground, Li Gun walks to him telling him that he really needs to be beaten up before he listens to others. Was life any better after getting rid of me in the tower? You shitty bastard. Li Gun yells. He talks a few more steps saying you guys stole my divine artifacts and assets and even forged my will. Yang Wei stutters and trying to reply back to Li Gun. It's alright, Li Gun says as he cracks his knuckles. I was going to kill all of you anyway. Yang Wei shakes with fear as Li Gun slowly says is going after his house, the Ares divine cadre, divine artifacts and the rest of the saint bastards. I'll destroy everything. Li Gun says. Yang Wei thinks to himself that he can't allow those things to happen and that based on the way he speaks and acts, he's not bluffing. Yang Wei looks at Li Gun wondering if that really was him and how he came back after surviving the tower. He then stood up saying it's impossible and began slowly rising in the air and that if he really was Li Gun, he should prove it to him. Yang Wei summons the divine god of Ares, the Jade Emperor. Li Gun sees that only a part of the divine god appeared. Yang Wei points a finger and chains appeared from the ground. Shackling Li Gun. Do we look like weaklings to you? I don't know how you came back from the tower, Yang Wei says as he summons a million swords with the royal skill divine god's weapon. The swords swarm towards Li Gun. Wow, so amazing, Li Gun said. Yang Wei tells him to shut up and die as the swords circle around Li Gun. And soon Li Gun was buried underneath the millions of swords that became a mountain. Yang Wei wonders if he died and lands in front of the mountain of swords and says Li Gun was foolish in challenging him. Smiling happily that he beat him. But a green light flashes from inside the swords, terrifying Yang Wei. Out of the light, came Li Gun's fist straight into Yang Wei's face. With a bloodied face, Yang Wei questions how he survived. Li Gun steps on Yang Wei's stomach, covered in a green aura, happily saying that Yang Wei finally recognized him. Yeah, I'm really back. For real. Li Gun said as he looks menacingly at Yang Wei. Li Gun covers his nose, asking Yang Wei what happened for his weapons to smell like shit. Yang Wei stares at him silently, thinking that Li Gun's restoration was impossible for even the best healers in the world. Li Gun thanks Yang Wei as he manages to obtain multiple new skills. He steps on Yang Wei harder asking if he could try something out. Yang Wei asks him to wait. The Ares divine god is scolding Yang Wei asking why Li Gun was still alive and disappears while cursing at him much to Yang Wei's surprise. Li Gun smiles while Yang Wei panics over how a divine god could disappear. Li Gun cracks his knuckles once again, saying he's quite merciful and that he'll only make Yang Wei feel the pain he experienced. Yang Wei screams in agony. A group of people are seen looking around and notices something. They wondered what happened upon seeing many dead calamities in the area. Hugo looks around sensing an energy. Using his power he sees through the ground and spots Yang Wei. The Ares members felt something was wrong and could also feel Yang Wei's energy. They wondered why his energy felt so weak. A bright light appears behind them. Hugo tells them all to back off a second as he prepares his skill. The members scream out loud as an explosion is seen. Hugo descends into the hole he made. Noticing the note on Yang Wei's body and wonders what mess he was going to make next. Fast forward, Li Gun is seen in front of a building whistling. He looks at it and says that the divine artifact that Yang Wei stole from him was inside. Many artifacts are on display as Li Gun walks in. He calls Yang Wei a bastard for being obsessed with looking rich and flaunting his wealth like this. He looks one way, noticing the smell of his divine artifact over there. He looks around wondering why there were so many fakes and notices something. It was a toothpick used by him. I finally found it, my precious baby, Li Gun said as he presses hands against the glass. Sirens are heard all around as the alert went off. The security team rushes to the area as Li Gun stood there holding the toothpick with broken glass behind him. The guards surround him, asking him to put his hands up and to put down the item while giving up peacefully. Li Gun replies he doesn't want to and flicks his wrist with the toothpick. It sends all the guards around him into the air as Li Gun smiles happily saying you gotta use something you're familiar with. Nice to see you again, Lime. A cute and pink slime appears in Li Gun's hand as the notification alerts him that he had discovered a divine artifact and met the requirements needed to open the creation workshop. Lime is happy to see Li Gun again and asks if they should head out now. As they made their way out, Li Gun notices a golden door and the notification informs him that a divine artifact of Ares can be felt strongly in there. Li Gun grins widely saying it'd be a bit disappointing if I leave empty-handed though. He opens the door. Hugo asks if I'm too late. As dozens of people are seen in front of him running away from the building as it burns. Hugo cries begging for Li Gun. Lee Gun exits the building carrying a huge white bag behind him. Hugo screams at him, "Oh Texa!" Lee Gun replies. Hugo runs to him calling him a bastard with tears in his eyes. Lee Gun calls him a true friend but Hugo goes past him. Lee Gun and Lime are in disbelief as they turn to see Hugo grabbing someone else and telling that person he should have come see Hugo immediately. This annoyed Lee Gun as Lime looks nervous. Lee Gun drop kicks Hugo in the face, asking him if he can't even remember a guy's face. The random person calls it a perfect dropkick. "You want to get your ass beat? There are some things you shouldn't be confused over," said Lee Gun as Hugo trembles in pain. Hugo recovers and sees Lee Gun's divine artifact, Lime, on his shoulder. Lee Gun shows his fist to Hugo asking if he needs to be beaten up more to be reminded about who he was. Hugo hugs Lee Gun upon finally recognizing him. With tears and snot covering his face, Hugo says, "So you were really alive? You really are Lee Gun, right?" Lee Gun replies with a swift punch to the stomach. "The hell are you hugging me out of nowhere for?" Lee Gun shouts, "How you really are Lee Gun," Hugo says as he kneels in pain. A notification pops up, informing Lee Gun that the divine god of Sagittarius, Apollo, had appeared. A bright line shines and a god appears behind Hugo. It slowly opens its eyes, shocking Hugo. They both wondered why he suddenly showed up here.